What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com, at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. Co-founder and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com. Alongside here with co-founder and CEO Brian, at BrianJesterFF on Twitter. How are you today, man?
What's up, Moose? It's good to talk to you again. I know we talked in real life, but we haven't talked on a stream in what seems like forever.
Yeah, and I'm actually sober this time, which is always a good thing. I'm not up till 6:30 a.m. Vegas time, off the blackjack tables, trying to talk to you about who should I play in NHL. Like
And
that's never a good conversation.
I was gonna say, yeah, because the last time you and I spoke, there was very little sober moments, and yeah, wild trip. And I don't know about you, but we've been back for almost 10 days. No, is it 10 days? I guess 10. No, like a week now, and
Yeah,
just starting to get my body back right. So
yeah. I this shirt was the shirt I was supposed to wear during Super Bowl. The Bengals like hoodie short sleeve, which is perfect for weather like today. It's like 60 degrees or so, but it's raining, so you need something to cover your head. Don't really want to carry an umbrella with me, but figured I'd put it on for the show and go from there. So let's jump right into it, Brian. For those who are new here or those who haven't been here for a while, this is the $1,000,000 Mission. Normally, it's a weekly show during the NFL season. During the off season, Brian and I decided to switch to a monthly format. So this is the February 2022 $1,000,000 Mission. The original goal was for Brian to hit another $1,000,000 contest, $1,000,000 payday, like he did back in the Super Bowl GPP a couple years ago. And so we take his lineup process, what he did right, what he did wrong. We also look at other pros and other winners, what they have done successfully, and we try and answer your questions along the way, come all together to have a better process. Now the NFL is over. We're going to be talking about Brian's MMA lineups. He's been on an absolute heater, and recap some of his NFL playoffs as he drops from Discord. Are you still there,
I'm still
Brian?
here. Yeah, I'm still.
You there? Oh man, I thought we were doing well.
We will. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So we're
All
good.
right. So give me a sec. I'll get the camera back working.
Yep. So again, just to recap, we're gonna be recapping Brian's 2022 moments so far, NFL playoffs. We're gonna be starting with MMA, and we'll just show it on screen here as soon as I get the logo off. And Brian, this is from your Roto Tracker. Am I correct on that?
Correct. So the Roto Tracker screenshots, we referenced Roto Tracker in the Ultimate Guide. Obviously, you've probably, if you listen to my new podcast, you've heard basically every single pro reference it. But yeah, this is a screenshot just from this year, this calendar year, the tax year 2022, January 1st and beyond. And yeah, so I tweeted, what was it, a couple days ago, Moose, about hitting my fourth and final MMA championship ticket, which is a 70-person live final, or ends up as a live final on
Mhm.
DraftKings, and the max you can get is 4, and they've only awarded 37 tickets so far, or 38, and I have the max already, and it's just been in the zone,
Yeah.
and MMA, and obviously running hot to some extent, but just really feeling the process.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And I mean, the fact that again you have 100, almost 104% return on investment, pretty nuts. Not gonna lie, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, so only, in quotes, only 1,100 entries, obviously, and 103% ROI is crazy. But my lifetime ROI in UFC is close to 40%, but that's with 2 100K victories, another 50K victory. This is all small field and satellite, and some cash actually mixed in. I haven't even hit for a top 10 prize this year. It's only been 6 weeks, right? But I haven't hit for a
Mhm.
top 10 prize in the big GPP just yet. And God forbid I hit one of those, what the ROI is going to look like.
Oh god, that's definitely going to be hashtag Spike Week. We'll have to get Bismo to make a chart for you, as we show on here. We have Jimmy in the chat. It says, "Hi guys, thanks for the insights on UFC tonight's gameplay." Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, if anybody has any specific questions, if they want to know more about Brian's process, you can definitely go ahead and ask. We're here until 10:30 or so. I'm just gonna be answering your questions about whatever you guys throw at us, and guys and girls throw at us. Right, the one thing that when you first sent me the screenshot was, one, really good job, but two,
Thanks.
what really pointed like in the UFC, I think, and like individual, like one versus one matchup sports is your average score 409 versus your average winning score 522. Basically, that's a good victory. So my first thought to you is, how are you doing UFC lineups different where you may need 40, 50 points away from cash to a win from your average score to your winning score versus UFC where it's basically you just need your other guy to win.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to give away too much here, just
Of
because,
course, yeah.
just because I think MMA is one of the few edges left. But my edges honestly come down to my portfolio of exposures across small field lineups, um, and then the player selection obviously as well. And for those of you who tune in on Fridays and those of you who are website members, you read Jake's plug, you see the model. And I was actually talking with Jake today, and I think, and not to pat ourselves on the back too hard, but I think we provide the best UFC content from the perspective of, and I think in specifically UFC DFS, there are three pillars of being a good tout or even a good player, right? It's you have the tape and the matchups, which I think is like, of all the areas, that's where you have the best touts, right? Some of the best analysts out there are really good at breaking down tape because they've either fought before, they've trained, or they're just good at breaking down tape. And Jake's one of those, great at that. Then you have the numbers and the math behind it. And I think our model does a fantastic job of that. And also some of the research we do and some of the research Jake's done. But then the third one where it all ties together is the strategy and the lineup constructions and the exposures and having a game plan around all of your lineups. And I'm positive that no one is even close to us in that regard. And we talk about this on our Friday shows when we have the UFC streams. So tying all this together, those three pillars, again, not to brag, I just think we are the best at that, and I have the best handle on it. And my ROI has shown this too, that fantastic handle on this. And I think, without getting into the nitty gritty, what we've talked about towards the end of the $1 million missions and NFL moves about
Mm-hmm.
small field contests and how to expose your players and different captains and whatnot, it really translates across all sports, and it's a great way to, by playing 4 to 8 lineups in small field in addition to whatever else you play, is a really great way to accelerate your ROI
Mm-hmm.
in small field contests. Whereas most, if you just played like a single entry every week in small field, it may take you an entire year to realize an ROI or longer. Whereas if you play 8 lineups per week, then it really picks up, and you'll get a more realistic ROI in a month, maybe 2 months.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Actually, Nirmata and I were talking about that for golf. Literally, this exact same conversation, maybe like 6 hours ago. So I don't know if
Yeah.
you're just reading in our Discord chats or not, but absolutely great. Now you hit it on the head, just absolutely perfect. All three pillars. Ace says, "Have you started focusing on small field contests for all sports?" And appreciate all you guys do.
I have. I really have. And I haven't. Um, I don't know if this will. It won't come out for 10 days, I guess. But the interview I've recorded today with the pro for the podcast talked about trimming the fat, and we've talked about it on here too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much you can play in DFS, and there's so much out there that any slip up can cause a drop in your bankroll, a drop in your ROI. And each day, each passing day, each passing year, each passing season, I try to do a better job of that.
Mm-hmm.
And really, a lot of the research I've done recently in the past 6 months or so has been small field contests and optimal construction and exposures for different sports, for small field contests explicitly. I haven't gotten around to doing it for NHL. I haven't gotten around to doing it for MLB, but I will before the season starts. So I haven't played NHL really the past couple of weeks. I might enter a qualifier here now and then. But to Ace's point, yes, I've been focusing on it. We talked about it towards the end of the NFL season. Obviously, MMA, I've been doing it for the past, I don't know, few months, I guess. And yeah, it's been a focus because I think one, as Ken and I talked about in the Super Bowl small field video that we did here on YouTube, the field doesn't play it right, and as we talk about in the Ultimate Guide, right, like the payouts are better structures. So
Yeah.
that combination is really where, I mean, how much better can you get in DFS?
And I think that almost kind of translates into a fourth pillar. Again, not to be very touty or anything like that, but the fact that, I mean, starting basically Sunday, Monday, we have you, Ken, Jake, whoever our experts are in individual sports, are talking about different contest types: small field, large field, cash, all the stuff like that. So you're getting the mix of professionals opinions early on, and so you're constantly like I could probably go to UFC right now, the UFC Discord channel, and someone's probably talking about either a fight or a contest type or something of that nature. Same thing with PGA or NFL. And again, I think it's just going back to trimming that fat, realizing what you're really good at. Roto Tracker really helps with that, and just as you pointed out, Brian, there's very little edges left in DFS. So if you find your edge, you need to exploit it as much as possible.
And maximize it, like completely maximize it. Definitely figure out what you do well, what you don't do well, and the areas you don't do well, even the areas you do well, keep researching, right? Specific contest types, what pros do, like research. That should encompass 90% of your DFS time, and the other 10% should be finding contests and making lineups.
Yep. Jimmy says, how do you best predict a high DFS score on a fighter that has yet to put up his best score?
These are my favorite. The favorite fighters to target, the fighters who have 4 points per game on average, right? Or for whatever, 4 average fantasy points per fight. And so the 2 areas you see that happen, I guess 3 areas, Moose, right? The first area is a newcomer who has 0 stats, right? The second example would be a fighter who has 1 fight and just got demolished or lost in their first fight, and they're, if you look on DraftKings game logs, they have 1 fight and they scored 12 points, right? That would be another. Or you have a veteran who really historically hasn't put up great scores, but for whatever reason, they'll put up an explosion out of nowhere. So I think the best way for each of those scenarios to find a high score fighter, one is watch some tape on the newcomers and see how their game differs from what the betting markets are telling you. For instance, maybe there's a guy who's a grappler, but he has low knockout percentage in the markets because he hasn't historically knocked out many people. But if he wins as an underdog because he grapples, he's probably going to score pretty well. That's one. Second one, this is my favorite. I've talked about it with Jake. Literally every Friday we talk about this when we do the shows. You have a fighter that you kind of like going into their debut, but debut fighters just don't score a ton. It's a really tough spot for them. They're going against a veteran who has training. Many times the guys or girls making their debut are on short notice, and they don't have time to prepare. They don't have the proper training, and it's just first fight nerves, right? They get that out of the way. Now they're fighting someone else. Oftentimes they'll fight a debut in their second fight, even better. But now they have that difference from fight 1 to fight 2 is so massive. It's kind of the difference in NFL from a rookie year to a second year, making that leap. And really love targeting those who lost their first fight. And then thirdly, really it just comes down to an ownership thing, right? A lot of times you'll see a veteran who doesn't put up fantasy scoring end up at like 11%, 15% in a GPP. And really you're just playing the odds there, especially if they're a favorite. You just hope that there's an explosion. Really what happens, and we can't really predict this ahead of time, the actual reason, but really when they have these explosions, it's either they're fighting for their contract, and maybe you can find that information, or 2, they're just trying to be more exciting fighters, and they realize if they want a late career title shot, they got to start knocking people out, and they have a change in their approach. And so that's something we won't know ahead of time. That's really just playing the ownership game.
Yeah, exactly. And the best thing is, if you're playing, if you're not playing the absolute largest field GPPs, you're playing cash, head-to-heads, small field, 100-player league, stuff like that, you still don't need them to score at the absolute best they possibly could ever do. If they still do well and win, you're playing the ownership game and getting massive leverage. That can still hit you there.
And like small field, like I was talking about the portfolio of lineups, you don't have to get crazy in every lineup. And I think that's the issue in small field everywhere. Every sport is people are either too conservative and play it too much like a cash game, or they get too crazy. And you just got to find that right balance. And then in your 5 lineups that you're making, spread out that exposure of what that crazy play or that differentiation looks like, so you're not all in on one different play for all your lineups.
Which is hilarious because of all your big wins, you're like, hey, I need this main event plus 400 underdog to win, and I'm just like, every time, dude, how?
Or honestly, you look at this past weekend where I got the 4th ticket. I needed the main event favorite to win, so that was sick. He did.
I was like, wow, that's a first.
I know, because if you look back in December, I needed Poirier, main event favorite, to win for 80K. He lost. Oftentimes when I need the favorite, they don't win. It's really when I need the underdog. Really, most of the time, I'm sweating the main event not to score well, right? That's usually what I'm trying to hold on to.
That's true, yeah. So, All right, so we went ahead and talked about your UFC MMA, awesome ROI. Again, if you have more questions about it, we can definitely go ahead and go back. I'm going to switch over to NFL right now, and so Brian, just to confirm, this is again calendar year, tax year 2022.
Yes, January 1st, 2022 and beyond. Uh, Again, we're not trying to brag here. It is a reminder that just because you saw the negative ROI during the season doesn't mean I've lost my touch, right? I can still win. But this is basically NFL playoffs and Super Bowl. The top line is overall ROI on DraftKings because I haven't really played much on FanDuel over the past couple months even. And then the bottom three rows are contest sizes. So 51 to 100 entries, 101 to 250 entries in a contest, and then 251 plus. So a lot of the small field stuff we've talked about are below 250, and it's no surprise that you see my ROI increase the smaller the contest size.
Yeah, and excuse me, and as you look, which I thought was strange, is your average score actually goes up as the number of contestants go down. My initial hypothesis, Brian, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, is you again, as you spoke about just 5 minutes ago, you don't have to get so crazy in these small field contests. So you're not playing 1% guys that have a huge range of outcomes from 1 to 20. You're playing guys that may have 7 to 12.
For sure, absolutely, and yeah, I mean, just yeah, the standard deviation for those scores are way different depending on the contest size.
Yeah, and uh, again, which I thought was strange is still 21. Your most percent of your in the money contest, the ITM column, was in the 250 plus columns. Yet that had the lowest ROI. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. I was trying to figure that out too, but I think if I'm trying to figure out why that is the case, I do play a decent amount of super boosters and winner take all satellites, which could drag down the in the money percentage because most of those are less than 250 players.
Okay, okay,
I
that makes
think
sense.
I think that might be what's going on there.
Or it's just that the GPPs are so top heavy that even if you get in the money, the ROI is bad.
I mean, that's also probably it too. And really, to me, I'm just in all sports, right? I'm just trying to hit one. I don't need all my lineups to cash. That'd be
Yeah,
great, obviously. But even the small field, if I play 6 lineups, I might cash 1 out of 6, but that one generally is in the top 5.
exactly. Yep. So, yeah. Again, if you guys have questions about this, definitely go ahead and ask. But we had some questions from people earlier, and um, so first off, Brian, with this being from January 1, 2022 to current, do you think you're going to start playing more 2 game slates, 4 game slates, small slates going forward? I know our writer Bismo's had success with the Monday to Thursday, the Sunday night to Monday slate. Have you thought about doing that anything next season?
I've thought about that specifically, where yeah, obviously, as if you followed along through the regular season, the biggest GPPs are hashtag hard. But I showed a lot of success in small field, and what you see on the screen, these dollar amounts, mostly small field. I still played them. I think the Millie Makers every single slate, which goes to show that even playing those, having a 35% ROI is kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So just to balance that and to capitalize on this ROI, and again, this is a small sample, right? But I think I'm going to start doing that and focus more, put a couple more minutes into my weekly routine to where I can play the Monday through Thursday or the Sunday night through Monday primetime slates. And the best thing is that has an even greater period of time where I can late swap compared to the playoff slates, which yeah, each game is incremental, but it's legit like 15 minutes in between games to late
Yeah.
swap, where I might have an even greater edge to do it over the course of a regular season on the primetime slates.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And he says it's interesting to see your ROI is so high in small field, even though the skill level of your opponents increase exponentially. And that was another question that I had is, you see these small field contests and it's flooded with people who are near the top of the RG leaderboard, Rogue Grinders leaderboard. How would you answer that question, Brian?
Yeah, so if you want an in-depth answer, check out the small field high risk contest video I did for the Super Bowl with Ken. We talked about it in there in the second episode of the Emotional Bankroll podcast with Brick 75. We went into detail on both of those. In short, the answer is because pros are playing so many lineups and so many contests, they're not okay, and maybe they're a handful, but a vast majority are not optimizing their lineups for the contest that they're entering. So we'll see guys with 150 lineups dump some of their lineups into these types of contests. We'll see some players enter their main or their cash lineup into these contests, and they're not actually optimized. Whereas I am making specific lineups for specific contests, and that gives you a massive edge. Plus, in addition to that late swap talk, any changes I have to make, I can do for these specific contests. Whereas top 10 players who have a billion lineups to late swap definitely are not 100% optimizing their lineups down to the minute for these smaller contests. So in the end, even though they're sharper players, their lineups aren't as sharp as yours in this contest size.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer there. And some other listener questions that we had beforehand is, we all exclusively use the Occupy tools to build lineups. Brian, is there any sport where you trust the model the most for what it spits out, or is there other sports that you got to run it a couple times, you got to get some feel for it? What's your process there?
Yeah, and I get this question a lot. So we get this question a lot, right, in our emails and Discord about, especially the lineup builder too. It's like, do I trust the model? Do I just let it build? Do I, change some settings? But what it comes down to, every model is only as so good as your ability to use that information and combine it with GPP strategy or small field strategy or whatever strategy it may be, right? Because our models are great, and if you look at even like our NHL, I would say trusting the model period would be NHL. One of our members, who's a top 10 player, actually did some research and some correlations beyond what we've done in our own research, and found that our NHL model actually outperforms Vegas by a slight margin when it comes to predicting goal scoring, and it actually outperforms other industry sites by a significant margin. And for that reason, I would say our NHL model is the one I trust the most because of all that. But still, no matter how much you trust it, you still have to input rules based on what you know about how to win GPPs, right? For low-owned players, you got to get those in. You got to make sure your lineups have the right rules. You have to, like for MMA, right? I trust the math that we have there, but I still have to implement my own GPP thinking into it, because if not, right, it's no model is built perfectly for every single slate. You have to adapt and adjust yourself.
And not even only, like I said, not for every slate, but also for every contest as well. So sometimes, and we talked about this before, Brian, where if you're building for different contest types, different slates, it's so important to, even if it's just for 30 seconds to go fill up your water cup, it's just to get a refresh of what you're building. So, for example, for NFL, if you're building 150, you spend hour building 150. Cool, I got my stacks all good. Got everything set up. If you're using the lineup builder, you can go to a different slate group, do that, get a walk the dog, go to lunch, cook dinner, whatever you need to do to get your mind out of that mindset of that 150 max. Then you can come back and you can build your 10, 20, 4, one single entry lineup, however many you're building, and you have that fresh, almost like an empty slate to start building with this mindset of small field versus the original 150 that you already built.
You have to, because it is so different. And that's how I caught myself earlier having some issues, because I was just going through the motions and just moving from lineup to lineup and slate to slate and not really resetting, as you're saying. So again, you could hop in the builder and run the model and spit out the best OF index lineup, but that doesn't mean it's good for a specific contest type, because it may be too risky for a small field. It may not be risky enough for large field, right? It's really a balance, and you have to know. And again, we try to do a good job in the plugs and in the strategy guides of what you need for each contest type, and you have to take that knowledge and put it into the builder or whatever optimizer you're using with our model.
Yep, pretty much. Baron says, who does the modeling mainly at Occupy? Does it vary by sport? No, it's literally me. Brian will be like, hey, Moose, do this. And we're like, all right, let's do it, I guess. So, yeah, me.
Yeah, so Moose handles all the modeling and the coding and the tech. I do have some inputs in PGA and MMA and some other. I have very minor inputs. Moose is the backbone of the modeling, though.
And by inputs, it's do this so I can do. It's like make this so I can do this. Pretty much.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
pretty much. But yeah, so that's it. And then another question here is GPP lineup strategies for single player sports like PGA or MMA. And I'll just make one point here. I think PGA is very rare in the sense that in our daily plug by Niramata, he does the line move sections, which was and it pairs against shows mispriced golfers. I think that's one of the few sports where you can do that, and it's a huge and very powerful tool. Brian, what's your thoughts on that, and then the overall lineup strategies for single player sports?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And that actually kind of ties into what I was going to say. Because if you look at NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA even, right? There are different correlations and you need fantasy points projections in some capacity to build good lineups, right? But for PGA and MMA, even League of Legends, tennis, like any of these types of contests like this, or any of these sports, and I've talked about this before too. Ownership is primarily driven by betting odds. So for MMA, right, there's obviously projections out there, but if a guy has a high KO percentage or a guy is likelier to win than those priced around him, his ownership naturally increases. If you look at golf, I think data golf projections probably impact ownership the most of projections. But if you look at betting odds and a guy is mispriced according to betting odds, his ownership gets inflated. And you see this across all sports, tennis, League of Legends, right? All this happens. And so by saying that, if you can find any way to evaluate plays that isn't Vegas, right? So whether it's grinding tape in MMA, whether it's listening to PGA podcasts and being tuned in to what players are saying about their game, League of Legends, whether it's you watch the games and you're good at esports analysis, uh, tennis, you're like Ross, our tennis writer, and you have all this other advanced data, right? If you use betting odds, you're going to be on the same playing field as everyone else. And the reason I'm so good at MMA is I exclusively try not to use betting odds, and our model doesn't, obviously, to try to pick the best plays, because then you're automatically thinking differently than 95% of the field.
Yeah, you hit it on point completely. And we saw it during when pandemic originally started, and like League of Legends was the only thing going on, and you would see line moves that happen overnight, and just like 70% owned players were just on these huge favorites. And it's like, this is nuts. You're playing people who are projected to win 30% of the time, and yet they're getting like 1% of the ownership.
Yes, dude. And same in MMA too, right? It's like
Yeah.
no one wants to play an underdog. They'd rather just play the main event underdog, even though they're just as likely to lose. But they get 5 rounds to lose instead of three rounds to lose. And this doesn't happen all the time, but you'll see a fighter's ownership be less than their actual win probability. And
Yeah.
that's pure Vegas math. And that's just people having low risk tolerance. That's all it comes down to. So I mean, you just gotta be willing to play some of these plays, and they're gonna lose often, but that's how you win the big prizes, and that's how. Again, you only in small field, you only have to make one of those stands. Large field, you gotta make more, obviously, but if you just make one of those
Yeah.
stands in small field, that's enough to get you to this ROI level.
Definitely. We didn't pay Steven to say this, but he says the guides on the site are really the best, hands down. It's really all in there besides the projections. Thank you, Steven. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Appreciate you, Steven. Yeah, because there are a lot of guides out there on how to play sports, right, and what to do. We really wanted to put these guides together. They're all free, actually, right? We want to put these guides together to teach you the Occupy way, the research we've put together on how to build lineups properly for different sports and contest types. So I'm glad you're getting that the best use out of that, Steven. For those of you who are watching, go check out the guides part of the website. I mean, it really does. I mean, honestly, we shouldn't have it for free. Shit, there goes my camera. But
Win $34,000 in NFL
free.
in 2 months. Can't get a working camera.
Dude, I got 1 billion wires here, so there it goes again.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. No, we're not good. Anyway, so yeah, I'll start a GoFundMe for an Ethernet cord for you.
Dude, I have like 1,000. I kicked it like 3 times with my foot. That's what happened.
Nice. So, yep. So that's that. Last question here is, Brian, what's your thoughts on the MLB lockout?
I feel like they're gonna fuck it up. I feel like we're not gonna get a season to start on time, which honestly I'd be okay with, because it gives us time to implement this overhaul of the MLB model and more time to research MLB small field. So I'm okay with it, but I don't know. What do you think?
So I have a thing here. This may be like super tinfoil hat galaxy brain here, and I don't think they're going to start on time. What do you think the probability is? Because what NBA ends what April 10th ish or whatever. What's the probability that like the MLB doesn't start? There's a break in NBA. The stars align. We get a solo USFL on its own day, opening day for like 100K plus. Like,
Dude, that would be sick. That would be
like that's
sick.
why they're really locking down. They're locking out so we can get a single bullet USFL slate, nothing else on for 100K on
USF,
DraftKings.
no, dude, you gotta aim higher. The USFL Millie because every other sport is in between regular season and postseason, or they haven't started yet. Um, I mean, that's quite the conspiracy theory. I will say, USFL will have content, and I'm excited for it. And I think I don't know about you, but we really don't have much rules, right? We don't know much about it. Have a feeling, just reading the tea leaves, especially being out in Vegas for the FSGA, that I think a lot of the contests and rules will mimic the XFL. So if you want to get a head start on USFL DFS, try to dig up some XFL contests and see what won there and what was profitable.
I don't even know if like people have XFL CSVs anymore. They probably just got rid of everything. It was probably part
I
of
know.
bankruptcy. It's like you can't even have the CSVs anymore.
Yeah, we're taking these home with us. Yeah, I actually gotta dig through my files too to see if I have anything.
Yeah, and so it's very curious in these like super small leagues. You don't know that are brand new. You don't know what type of data feed you're going to be getting, what other industry people are going to be getting, and I will always pat myself on the back every time I had to say this. But Chris and I, mainly me, we literally like watched the film and did our own manual stats to
Seriously.
incorporate into the daily plug, which is basically like that just shows how hard we're willing to work to give you the data and the plug and the strategy that we pour basically our heart and souls into. So if it comes down to that, thankfully there's only 8 teams in the USFL. I'm okay with doing that again, just so we can pump out content for DraftKings. I don't know if I think FanDuel's doing it as well. I would hope so. Um, but yeah, overall, back to the original question. I think MLB starts late, and I hope we get USFL on a single night.
Let's hope so. It's funny because at the FSGA conference, I was talking to a data provider who provides data to a lot of sites, and the guy was drinking a bit, so he's been a little more open than usual. And he was like, "Yeah, we're not gonna have USFL because we don't know if they're even gonna be around for more than a year. So we're not gonna put all this effort into providing a data feed
Mm-hmm.
if they're not going to." However, there was an announcement on a data feed being provided by I think Sports Radar, so there'll be data. What extent it comes down to, I don't know, but we'll be ready for it regardless.
Yep, exactly. So we're gonna stay here for another 30 seconds. I think that's what the delay is on YouTube. If you have any last lingering questions, definitely go ahead and ask. If you like this type of content, make sure you hit the thumbs up, like button. If you're watching the replay, make sure you hit comment down below if you have any more questions, or if you like what you saw. If you didn't like what you saw, any criticism is good. Brian, is there any last lingering thoughts, comments, concerns, questions you want to talk about before I take us out of here?
Just that we enjoy this type of content. It's a great space for us to be able to expand on concepts we talk about in the Discord, in our videos, in our written content. So feel free to ask questions. We'll be doing this monthly until the NFL season starts. And if you like this type of stuff, you'll like the Emotional Bankroll podcast, which I've been putting out. 4 episodes have been released. 3 more coming down the line here. It's available in all podcast apps, and we do have the Emotional Bankroll playlist here on YouTube if you prefer listening in that medium.
Nice. Awesome. So, with that being said, Moose and Brian here from Occupy Fantasy. Until next time, have a good night.
Peace.